Hello, and welcome to another edition of dimelo Cinema Club. Tonight, we're going to be looking at Roger Avary's 2002 movie, The Rules of Attraction. I'm not alone tonight. I'm here with some special guests. We have JP and Michaela, El Dondino, Jason Eccles, and Steve Dez. Would you guys like to start with your initial thoughts?
No. No. Let's have DJ Master Chris tell us about the movie. Let's set up the platter. Let's set the scene, as they would say.
Yeah, or at least why you picked it, and then we'll go.
All right. So here's the deal. So I picked because I feel like talking about it. And so it's a black comedy made by Roger Avary. He is famous for writing parts of Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs. True Romance, Killing Zoe. He wrote, I think, Silent Hill. So he wrote a lot of different screenplays, and he won an Oscar with Tarantino for Pulp Fiction. So the reason I watched this movie was when I was in college, I was not an RTF major, but they used to have these nights on campus where you could go and they would have someone from the film industry come in for like $5. So I went to one, and it was Tony Rolfe, who is the editor for like Taxi Driver, The Right Stuff, Jacob's Ladder. And he was, at the time, he was giving a speech and he showed one of the scenes from this film. And I never saw it all this time, but I had seen like that and one other scene. I forget how I saw it, but only these two scenes. And I was like, I'm interested to see what the rest of the film is. The scene was the one where the guy's going through Amsterdam and all throughout Europe. So that's how this movie came to me. And I wanted to see it all these years later. Definitely not what I expected at all. So that is my.
You couldn't have picked Taxi Driver or one of the other movies you mentioned.
So you can go first, Dino. What do you think?
Sure. I didn't look anything up before watching the movie, but I was like, well, I saw James Van Der Beek, Jessica Biel. I was like, oh, early 2000s, great rom-com. All right, let's go in. And then there's, spoiler alert, rape in like the first 5 minutes. And I'm like, whoa, what are we watching? I didn't know what it was. It was weird because, like you say, it's a dark comedy, but it was almost right in this line of if it's a little bit kind of like Kids, it's got some comedy vibes, it's got some Requiem for a Dream-ish, or that's kind of what it's trying to do. I was kind of thinking it's a little Catcher in the Rye-esque, and then I realized, like, oh, this is based on a novel. Okay, I wonder how the novel is. So I was a bit confused throughout. There are some really good moments in it, but overall, I just kept wondering, I wonder how this would be adapted today. Like, I feel like it would maybe be different. Probably would be a series and not a movie. And at the same time, I was thinking, my first initial thoughts actually was like, oh, wow, you can tell this was shot on film. You can see the graininess. And I was like, man, I missed that feeling of movies that are just kind of, like, I don't know. Like, for certain movies, I think that really works. Just like, it's kind of grungy because of film and the speckle, and it's a little dark. And at the end, I noticed I was like, Final Cut Pro. So this is one of the first films, I guess, kind of edited on Final Cut Pro and stuff like that. So some really interesting things. But at the moment, I don't think I'd recommend this to anyone. Because apparently the novel and James Van Der Beek's character is the younger brother of American Psycho, of Christian Bale's character. And so apparently there were these scenes when he then, spoiler, says, my brother sent me the money. I'm like, what brother? Nothing was ever done. And it was like Christian Bale was offered to come back as that role and decided not to. And so I was like, so much I felt was missing from the movie. So overall, I mean, I had some really good stuff. Sometimes some stuff I like. It's very dated, I feel. Like, you got Havoc, and then this is way above Havoc, but I'm just like, it's kind of dated in what I was like, I went to college. I don't remember these types of parties. Where were all the naked women at the parties I went to? Nowhere. We did have pajama parties.
But you did go to college in Alabama as a disclaimer.
You didn't go to no Rich Bateman College, no American Psycho, the cinematic universe that could have been.
I know, right? Anyway, that's my initial thoughts. It's all over the place. My thoughts, kind of like this movie, is all over the place.
That's so funny because, like, I'll go ahead and go next. That was something I was thinking constantly while watching this film. Was like, this was a novel at one point. Just because, like, the way that the characters are written and how, like, it was laid out. I think that the cinematography was really interesting for this film. But other than that, like I can respect it for being an interesting piece for, like, an artist trying to do something. But it wasn't a fun ride. It wasn't a fun ride. And now that I know that it's based off of an Ellis novel, everything makes sense. It's like, these women, like, why are they written this? It's because he wrote it. Makes sense. And here's something, guys, if you want to see what happens next, Ellis just released a new novel called The Shards that's supposed to take place after this one.
Oh, wow.
Immediately after this one, or like years later?
I think it's a couple of years, but it's like the same school.
What I was looking up, apparently this is his favorite adaptation of his books. It said from like 2015 or something when he was asked. This is saying that it caught the most of what his book was supposed to be, or the character.
It's a prequel. It's actually supposed to be... Sorry, it's actually a prequel because it's supposed to be Christian Bale's character at one of the private schools in LA.
Man,
high school.
That previous statement just proves to me that novelists don't know jack about screenwriting. Because Stephen King, from what I can recall, once told Stanley Kubrick to go fuck himself, I think I remember that correctly.
Yes. And that's because books are a different medium.
Which is why
I think a lot of these characters, as we're going to discuss, is very hard for us to relate to.
Yeah.
Because they're all supposed to be the ugliest side of stuff, which was a very popular way to write novels in the early 2000s.
And then they told J.K. Rowling she could write 3 movies and they were all bad.
And then there's a connection to Less Than Zero as well, the Robert Downey Jr. movie. And early on, they were going to have a couple of the characters from that movie show up because that was their album. And I'm like, what? So I was reading all these stuff afterwards. I'm like, this is so messy. Anyway, other people go. JP, you.
Oh my gosh! Why not?
Before you go, JP, let me just ask Michaela something. You said his new book is a prequel to
American Psycho.
To Patrick Bateman.
Sorry, okay. Like, it's just like, I know the brother character is a big part of the prequel, from what I understand. Like, I haven't had a chance to leaf through it, but it was released this year and it's already selling really well. Surprise, surprise. Gotcha.
This was perhaps the weirdest Dawson Creek episode I've ever seen. And I've never seen Dawson's Creek.
That was the whole show. That's what it was like.
That's funny.
I'll admit, I'm kind of on the same camp as Dina, where, look, I know the movie's not bad. But I don't know if it's good either. And I'm willing to say that it's my fault. I only say, like, this movie is definitely not for me. One, I hate children. I hate high schoolers. I hate college kids. I hate anyone under the age of 25, basically. I don't want to hear their stories at all. I don't want to see... When I saw the college stuff, it's like, no, I believe it. Like, yeah, that looks like shit that happened at, like, a college, I guess. And I don't know anyone who would want to see that story. Here's the thing, like, there's no one really to root for, because everyone in this movie is pretty much deplorable and living in their own fucking fantasy world.
No,
which is
I
why
don't think
none
that's
of these relationships work, which I'm sure is the point of the movie, but that's not for me. It's like, no, like I kept on like yelling at the screen. It's like, why is there so much stake for you guys in a relationship that does not exist? Because it exists in their fucking brain, but it's not real. And it's like, well, yeah, this is a movie about infatuation. So much to the point where one of the characters dies and we aren't told who they are until afterwards. It's like, oh, they were in the movie. I had no idea. Was I supposed to care? But it's crazy because like there's a lot of shots in this movie that I'll admit were pretty good that I really liked. But the movie was just not for me. And I'm willing to say that. It's definitely not for me. And I'm not sure who I would recommend it either, just because some of the subject matter in the film is very much problematic, which is like, that's not the film's fault. That's part of the story. And like, you know, if it's not for you, then just don't fucking watch it. But at the same time, I don't know who to recommend it to. And I really wish that the sequence that Chris was saying, Victor's sequence, I saw that as like that would have been a very cool Oscar nominated short, you know. But the rest of the movie is not that.
JP. They filmed 70 hours. They filmed 70 hours in Europe and did turn it into a movie, but then they couldn't get the rights for music, so it's never been released. But it was going to be released apparently as a separate movie or short or whatever. So you're in the right direction, only that it's never been released.
Oh boy, oh brother. So yeah, that's my first impression. Who knows? Maybe it'll change once we talk and stuff.
You said they couldn't get the rights from who, Dino?
Different music. That's what I read. It just like in the, you know, that they when they did after they filmed the actual movie, the director and producer and that actor and you know whatever crew went and filmed all the Europe sequence, and there was 70 hours.
No, I
that
heard
they
that.
filmed.
I was saying, did why why didn't they release it?
They couldn't get whatever music. I guess they couldn't get signed off on certain music. I don't know what it was,
Okay.
but that's all it said, that they couldn't get the rights to whatever music which is weird because you'd think they would just change the music and release it. So I don't know, but I had issues with copyright and stuff that they couldn't get.
Or use the royalty-free tracks that are available on iMovie if they made
I
it
know,
on
right?
iMovie.
Or on Instagram now, right? Just release it as little Instagram stories of that
Kind of
character.
does look like it in a way, a montage of ticks and talks.
Let's go to Steve.
Okie dokie. I have to agree, this movie is better than Havoc, and just like JP, I've never ever in my life seen an episode of Dawson's Creek. I think the only reason I'm even familiar with James Vanderbeek is because of maybe a cameo he did on a Kevin Smith movie.
Yeah, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
Yeah, probably one of those. And I was like, oh, okay. But I have no recollection of this guy. But I could tell for sure that like this was, what is he pre Brad Pitt, or is he like on
Not
It's
par?
like
No,
early Brad Pitt.
No, he's like a poor man's Brad Pitt, I think.
Yeah, but
not
he's like
even he's not even of that like
right.
cloth.
I thought he meant like age wise.
He's like the CW, like Brad
yes.
Pitt.
There's a lot of CW versions of other actors in
Yes.
this movie. There's a CW Robert Downey Jr.
You know,
in this movie.
He plays himself like a over the top in he's in Varsity Blues, but then in a TV show that lasted for a few seasons, I think it was originally called The Bitch of Apartment 2A or something like that. And then they changed it to the B of apartment whatever, and he actually plays James Van Der Beek, and just kind of heightened version of himself. So that's another James Van Der Beek bit of information.
And
anyway, go on, Steve.
I think the only character, and it wasn't through the whole movie, it was just this one scene, the scene that he got introduced. I had a huge problem with this character because I was like, man, if only they would have switched the characters, it would have been perfect. It was the drug dealer. In that first scene that he's like introduced or whatever, where's my money, whatever, he says at least 55 motherfuckers.
I wrote that down. That word is used so much in this movie.
No, but in that scene,
he just used every other word. Every other word.
Yeah.
I was like, that would have been the perfect role for like Samuel Jackson or like someone else. I was like, that dude, the one, I don't know if he's Jamaican, but he was talking in a Jamaican accent. If he was the one saying it, and that dude was the one like looking at porn or whatever, it would have been perfect. But during that scene, for some reason, I was just like, bro, this dude is trying to act black like so hard in this scene.
And it didn't help that he had a black guy with him. I feel like it would have worked better without a black guy in the scene, because you could be like, oh, this guy's pretending, kind of like a Jesse Pinkman before Jesse Pinkman, like you trying to use all this lingo and stuff like that shouldn't be using, right? That makes no sense. But yeah.
Or kind of like, oh God, we just said his name in the pre-chat. Or fucking Jiminy Cricket in Havoc.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt?
Joseph Gordon-Levitt and fucking the guy in the 21 Jump Street with Jonah Hill. Better movies, but I can't think of his name right now.
I have to see Havoc now. I have to see it. I have to watch.
See the review first.
You guys talk about it all the time.
It's so bad. Don't do it. Don't do it. Stop.
Just to quickly sum up, I thought the movie was a tad too long, personally. And that scene of Europe, that confused the hell out of me. Like it was just too much, like sped up. Like I was already confused at the beginning. I literally, when I finished the movie, I had to go back to the beginning to kind of like recap stuff. Because the whole like rewinding was like confusing me. And then when that scene hit, the Europe one, and it's like just super sped up, I was like, yo, what?
That means you probably saw a few scenes literally 4 times just because of the rewind.
Yeah, I did. But that's my initial thoughts. Go ahead.
All right, Jason, what do you think, man?
Well, I got to tell you, Chris, I am actually really happy you chose this movie because this one hits me in a very soft spot. College, and I remember it well. So I actually saw this movie when I was in college. That's what I meant to say. This was not like my college. A little bit it was, actually. So here's the thing. So I saw this movie in theaters when it came out, folks. And I remember the trailer for it was really, really cool. And it kind of reminded me of like sort of Cruel Intentions from the trailer, if I remember correctly, which I had like a huge crush on the film Cruel Intentions. So when this movie came, and they kind of sold it that way too. Like they kind of packaged the movie like that to sell it. And it was not like that. Now, here's why the movie has a soft space for me. I remember it viscerally because when I went to see this movie, I was looking it up in like the newspaper, I think at the time, because like this is like a 21-year-old movie. I'm looking it up in the newspaper, and I remember it was the last showing of the night. There was no other theaters playing it, and this is the last showing of the night, like on a Sunday. And I know that because no other theater was going to be playing it. This was like the last run in the last movie theater of the last night. And I went to go see this thing at like 10:30 at night, and I had to drive far. I had to drive far to go watch it. And I was like, I'm going to do it. And it was snowing in Michigan. And so I'm like trekking through the snow to go see this movie. And I make it to the theater and I sit down, and every reaction that you guys have had, your first impressions were the same ones I had. I was so confused and I was so disorientated. And I think I have a better reaction to the film this time around, because I believe, like, as I watched the movie from a different lens, a much different lens, I'm a different person now. And like my understanding of like film and storytelling is so different. I actually kind of, and I hated this movie. Let me just preface that. I hated this movie when it first came out. I just felt bamboozled and betrayed and led astray and run amok. Because it's like, man, I came so far to see this film and I don't get it. I don't like it. I felt what you felt, Steve. I was like, this thing is too long. Like, I'm confused. The movie starts off with all this loud music and I was like disorientated. And then it's like all these cuts to these different characters and we never quite see where the characters go or end up. And there's all these little stories. And it's like, well, why are we learning who all these characters are anyways? There's no real like character to root for, like you guys said. And all of that was very confusing to me for someone who wasn't like really super knowledgeable or had like a great encyclopedia of movies at that time. Like I didn't have any frame of reference for what I was watching. So yeah, this movie is kind of a trilogy for Easton Ellis or whatever his name is, Bret Easton Ellis. This is these guys are three brothers actually. This is the brother to Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, and the brother of Robert Downey Jr.'s character in Less Than Zero. They're all related. One goes to college on the East Coast, one goes to be Wall Street guy, one stays home and deals drugs. So yeah, this is all interconnected. It's all a family thing. And I didn't find that out till like years after watching this movie. So I will say this. This time around, I liked it more because it felt more experimental. I was able to follow the story better, maybe because I had already seen it. I really liked the scene of Victor being in Europe. I really liked his story. And I liked it because it's so off kilter. The movie already starts to build this pace that you're getting used to. And then they punch you in the mouth with Victor's story out of nowhere. Like, you don't even care about Victor. You know, he was just like a auxiliary character in the beginning, and now we get to see his journey through Europe, mostly because what's her name? I forget the actress's name. Has a huge crush on him.
Shannyn Sossamon.
Yeah, Shannyn Sossamon has like this huge crush on him. Plus, I had the biggest crush on Shannyn Sossamon.
Me too,
she might have been
dude.
the reason.
Me too.
Oh my
Me
God.
too, man.
She has the look of every like female character in like the 90s, early 2000s of just like
She was in A Knight's Tale.
Everyone had a crush in, just like
holy shit, she was! Oh
Yes,
my gosh, she was the one that Heath Ledger was like, I want that.
And
Oh,
A Knight's Tale, yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know who else you're talking about, Dino, who else she looked like, because I don't feel I feel like she's like Audrey Hepburn. Like, she kind of came into the game and she's just gorgeous. She's like picturesque.
Just like the hairstyle and stuff like that, you know, like
The asymmetrical hair.
yeah, and you know, kind of, you know, not the blonde, right? Not the. I guess I always tend to go for that, right? The
Which this movie is full of. This movie's full of blondes. You got Jessica Biel showing up. You got Kate Middleton in there. You know what I mean? Like, or not Kate Middleton. Kate
Bosworth.
Kate Bosworth. She's like, this thing is kind of loaded. Like of a bunch of people who would later become like movie stars. And it's funny because like James Van Der Beek is the lead. He's like the main guy. He's the anchor for this whole film. And I remember just being just totally, first off, he's very unlikable. I mean, obviously he's supposed to be unlikable. I remember at the time just not liking him because he was James Van Der Beek. He was Dawson's Creek, right? So it's like, I don't like this guy because he was like all the teenage girls liked him and they liked Dawson's Creek. So like right then I'm like, I don't want this guy to succeed as an actor. I don't want to see him in any more movies. No offense to him. Going back and watching this movie now, he's actually really good in this movie. He's actually like perfectly despisable. and perfectly unlikable. Like he plays the part that he's supposed to play. And I think everybody's kind of good because everybody's disgusting in this film. There's even poor Sossamon or whatever. Like she's probably the most likable character, but like her head is in the clouds about this guy Victor who doesn't even know who she is really, and she's calling him like her ex-boyfriend. Was it her ex-boyfriend?
No, they were supposedly just his boyfriend. Also, the nice thing about having IMDb when you're watching the movie is when someone references Clara Bow and you can look up because they say that the Lauren character looks like her, right? So I'm like, who is this? But from what I understood, just because you're bringing up the whole Europe trip with Victor, she kept saying that's his boyfriend, right? But everyone had this is my relationship, and then the significant other is like, who the fuck are you? And the Europe trip thing, great. It could have been taken out of the movie. Well, it just was confusing to follow these stories and to care for any character. That I'm sorry, Victor, put that in your other movie. It would be great. But let's get a little more intake. Like, how am I supposed to feel for a girl that commits suicide in a bathtub? That I don't know shit about.
And she didn't get a name tag. She didn't get a nameplate. Victor did though. On his tag,
I'm curious. Did you guys know? Were you guys able to notice her in the background of all those scenes?
I did in a few scenes.
Once.
The one where she was putting the food on the tray. That's when I noticed her.
No, of course that one. But like the one that he's walking to the end the party. I was like, because here's the thing. Here's the thing about me. I pay particular attention to extras because I know people. And in this movie, there's literally a person that I know. And now I'm wondering, how old is this movie? Because this person's been an extra for a long ass time.
2002.
Also, once you've done some extra work, I think you're more like, let me look at the extras and how invested they are in the actual work.
I know, but there's some people that do stand out. I mean, some it's just because they're them, but some people are like doing something in particular. And this girl at that party was like looking towards that way. So that what made me go like, why is this person doing that? And I'm glad they referenced that later.
Like, I can only imagine that initial party, because of all the rewinds, and then it was very cleverly done, and it was cool in how when it rewind out, because they had different camera angles, then they would follow a different character. I thought that was great. How long did that take to do, right? Like, that would have taken a shit long time to get all the people resetting. Now we're doing it with this other camera where this camera is following who back, that we're going to come back to them, and this one now goes to B. Am I crazy? Or that's what I was thinking of. Like, just...
Yeah, I don't think that would have taken that long.
Bit of like the editing process, at least, for it to like...
And just since you brought the camera work, I really like the scene when like James Vanderbeek comes in with the girl, the main girl.
They're walking into each other.
Yeah, and they're like split screen, and then it turns into like one.
But did you have a problem with like the proximity? Because the proximity was way off.
Yeah, it was through.
Because she grabbed his glasses, and I'm like, did she grab his glasses and take 4 steps back?
Suspension of disbelief, Jason. At this point in the film, you just gotta accept.
He just wanted to use a cool camera trick. It was like totally.
I was just glad he wasn't hurting her in any way at that point. This movie's dark.
Yeah, because he gave off until we see him later. Because the movie starts in the ending. He's giving off some really rapey vibes in the beginning of this movie.
You know who his brother is?
Oh yeah. Oh, he didn't have a chainsaw.
I mean, his whole family is nuts. Comes from a family of crazy rich people. Like, they're crazy and they're rich.
One male character, even the gay guy, they're all kind of on the rapey side. Every single male character is kind of like, there's 2 things in life: breathe and fuck. and that's
And
all
this
I'm
movie
interested
starts
in.
off with a rape right away, and that made me
That's
really
what-
uncomfortable.
And,
I was like,
the
not
fact
a
that she's not
rom-com.
reacting. Sorry. The
Well, she
fact that
was
she didn't
drunk.
react in that scene. And then he throws up on her back. Like, I was like, oh, what is going on?
I've heard of similar things, right? Of throwing up.
I've never seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
I've-
pretty wild way to start a film. I gotta say,
Yeah.
it's pretty
So-
dark and it's pretty wild.
Because
I
was
hated it.
expecting.
I didn't like this
I was-
movie at all. I think I
No.
have the worst impression out of everybody.
No, after Havoc, we've kind of toned down.
Set a
We've been
bar,
to
that's what it
darker
is.
places than you, Chris. That's the thing.
I hated this movie because, dude, the writing was, to me, so bad. It was like they just constantly were talking, and dude, he would say rock and roll. I was like, come on, like that. I don't buy that. Come on, he said it like 7 times.
I wrote some things, guys. Also,
is.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
he's
sorry,
like
go Michaela.
typical, like multiple characters like stop and go typical. I was like, nah.
I took some notes. First off, when it's like the roommate, is that Jessica Biel that then goes and fucks the whole football team? At what point, when has anyone ever been in a dorm where all the football players are and they're all wearing jerseys? I was like, are we going into a Pornhub video? What is this like?
This was
No, bro.
before their game.
Listen. I legit, there were many moments in this movie that I was like, this is straight up out of porn. Because, like,
There's a porn star in the movie.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Who?
The gay guy?
Holly Hollywood. She's in the film, apparently, because I'm looking at the list of
IMDb.
actors, and she's right there, and her profession is porn.
She was probably
Yeah.
one of the extras in the nudie scenes. Because there was a lot
Yeah,
of nudity in that one nudie
a lot
scene.
of times I get either porn star girls or strippers to be in those, and they actually are kind of like, this is cool. No one's groping me because I'm just standing here naked, and they don't have a problem with that. So I don't know the last time that I actually heard the word snatch being used as vagina. Like, I think
Pretty
it's
big back in the
been,
early 2000s. Pretty big.
it's been maybe 15 years, maybe. Yeah, 15, maybe like right when I moved to the US. I thought they were pointing out certain things. Like, also, he talks about I'm an emotional vampire, and all I could think of was What We Do in the Shadows, the one vampire that sucks people's energy. I thought that was great. They point out, hey, Michaela, what book did he steal from that guy's room? Did James Van Der Beek steal?
He stole 100 Years of Solitude by Marquez.
I know. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, clearly, this is showing this movie, no one changes. Because it takes a whole cycle of 100 years for things to change. That's what I got from it. Because then there was no mention of it again. Rock and roll. I did enjoy the MacBook Clam laptop because I have one of those. Only that one, the teacher. Yeah, I'm going to lose my tenure for having sex but not getting a blowjob and extorting students for better
Eric
grades.
Schultz, baby. He has like
he's been in his
two
other
and a
movies.
half scenes in the movie.
Yeah. So
He's
Eric
been
Stoltz is in a bunch of movies written by done by Roger Avery. He's the main character in Killing Zoe. He's in Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's in a lot of stuff.
I didn't realize that was Faye Dunaway the first time I saw this film.
Yeah.
Oh, what did that
Huh?
scene have anything to do with anything? And Dick? Who the fuck is Dick? Why do I care about Dick? I love Faye Dunaway. I think she did great. She's popping pills. Oh, maybe we'll get a little bit more of these characters. No, it's pointless.
I think what they were
It's
trying to do is show that they're one percenters. Because like I think that's what they were getting at. They were trying to show their money.
I think
Already
everyone
knew.
got that.
Well, rather it's just like they're also trying to show where Paul comes from.
Yep.
You know, like
Joe,
what?
they did-
Like
Oh,
it's supposed to show he has a type.
I did
They
write.
they did a whole music video of Faith in their underwear.
They did.
I know.
Like I said, he's got a type. Self-destructive.
I did write, why is everyone so extra? And I never think I would have written that.
I don't even need
before.
examples.
This is what his. It doesn't matter.
Why is everyone so
Listen,
extra?
none was more extra than Colin Clifton Jr., the drug dealer. I was
You
not
did
a
that
fan of his
because
performance.
Because I think the second guy in the underwear in the dinner scene, I thought that was much more extra than that other guy.
Dick?
In my
At least
opinion.
you can say drug, dude is from Florida and he's relocated and he's done, like the girl the druggie that was just sitting there the whole time and not saying anything. I was like, is it and then when he shows up and everyone in the kitchen, I was like, is this like training day scene where everyone's just there cutting shit? And then he's got the electric knife against the machete, and I'm like, what did this just turn into?
My thing is, why did he take him back to the drug dealer's house that he owed crazy amounts of money to? Like, I was thinking, like, is this like his suicide wish? Because he's like trying to kill himself. He doesn't care.
Probably.
I also read that the director purposely didn't film scenes, and then took them out. Because his whole idea was like, oh, college kids, they just drink so much and they black out. So you can even believe their narrations because everyone remembers things differently. So that whole scene when he's like, oh, I can get the rich kids to buy stuff 20 and charge them over 20%, and the drug dealer says 50%. I was like, all right, they're cool. He's gonna come and pay $300 for 2 grams or 3 grams. I don't know the price of coke in 2002 or 2001, but I thought they were cool. And then that shit happens. And then when he gets beat up, I guess he paid them there. But boy, he cut that black man's hand somehow with that electric thing, and all he had was some bruises. Get out of here. That's where that was the biggest havoc moment. Everything they were doing with the drug dealers, I was like, again, not that I hang out with drug dealers enough to know it, but I was just like, this makes no sense when you deal with drug dealers like that.
It's very disjointed, but I can tell this time around, watching it 20 years later, that it's very much by design.
Yeah,
and
it is.
It almost feels a little, I mean, at the time it felt avant-garde. It felt like it was kind of all over the place. But now, because I've seen so many crazy movies, this doesn't really seem that nuts. Like, it feels like very purposeful. Where before it just felt like I don't know what I just watched. I know what I just watched.
It's purposeful to not make sense. And I don't know if that's great.
I don't think it doesn't want to make sense. I think it wants to be disjointed and make the audience feel uneasy. Oh, this is one of the most important parts. When I left this movie, I don't know if I mentioned this to you guys, I felt physically ill. Like, my body was weak, and I've never felt like this before in my life. I had a crazy reaction to this film the first time I saw it. I remember driving back home like, I feel sick. Like, I want to throw up, but I don't have anything to throw up.
Can we talk
you fared
about
better in the snow getting to the cinema than
at the very beginning? Cool shot, bro, of kicking the keg down the hallway and put it in the room. But the reason you put it in the room, the keg has to go somewhere. And then when you rewind, you see that the keg's downstairs in the ice thing. Yeah, when you're done with the keg, you throw it out in the yard. I don't know what college drunk people decide, let me pick up a keg and go up to the second floor and roll it into a random room. I
didn't see him walking around picking up empty Solo cups either. You're right.
It was a cool shot. We saw the keg bounce. Reverse.
I know.
There's so many better places for that keg. I agree. But maybe they're like, we got to put it someplace safe for our deposit later.
How are they getting the door open to see what was going on in the room? That's
You see, the house we moved into, there was a keg down in the basement. So then I took that to college, and I didn't have to pay no deposit because I could just trade in the keg for a new keg and not leave a deposit. And it was great. And we never took it up to a room. It was always in the backyard somewhere. And that's But Jason, okay, so you felt ill getting out, and you said it was a Sunday. How was going to the first, I guess, keg party after that, or just first party?
What
Did
do you
you
mean?
feel like, well, in college, you said you saw it on a Sunday, you left
Yeah.
the movie kind of like ill. Did it make you go into like a college party seeing it differently or thinking about it differently?
No, because this movie, I just remember it confused me. I didn't really know what to make of the movie, so I never really processed it because I was just, I was just unable to. Also, when I saw this movie, I had to be like, I
18.
don't know, like maybe still a teenager. I might have been like 19.
It's a rated R. So yeah, I would, and it came out in 2002. I was 18 in 2003. So you would have already been like 19, 20 at that point.
Yeah, something like that. I would have been 20. I would have been 20 years old.
You know what's crazy is that the characters are all pretty recognizable. Like, you know who everyone, those 4 characters you mentioned before. And dude, this is like the peak movie for them. I can't think of a better movie. There's no better James Van Der Beek movie, if there is one, and Dawson's Creek the movie, right?
I
Kevin
agree.
Smith.
Shannyn
Varsity
Sossamon?
Blues.
No, this is her best movie.
No,
Varsity
no, no, no,
Blues.
no. A Knight's Tale.
A Knight's Tale is better than.
Oh,
I mean, it's a good
1000%.
movie, but she's not a great actress. She's very.
For James
Used to look at
Van Der Beek.
So, like, okay,
Varsity
so
Blues,
she's
man.
not a fantastic actress, sure. But her best performance is in A Knight's Tale. Like, she becomes a movie. That's her first film, and that's what made her a movie star because her performance, she just turns in like a perfect performance opposite Heath Ledger for that movie.
Because I never saw it after. Right?
Yeah, that's her biggest. Oh, but she was also opposite what's his face in 40 Days and 40 Nights. She was what's his name?
Ford, but that's
Adam Sandler?
Josh Hartnett.
We're all naming the wrong movies.
Josh Hartnett. She was opposite him. And so that was another really big movie for her. But A Knight's Tale was her breakout.
Yeah. 40 Days, 40 Nights? What's that? Is that
but
the
then,
one
like, listen, Jessica Biel, she went on to better things. Kate Bosworth,
What did
obviously.
Jessica Biel do? I was trying to think of it. I was like, I don't know. She married Justin Timberlake. That was like the best thing she did after that.
She married Ryan Reynolds. She was in Green Lantern, right? That's
that's not a good career move.
She was in Blade Trinity.
Mary Ryan Reynolds or Green Lantern?
Green Lantern.
She was in The Illusionist.
Oh, The Illusionist was pretty good. It's no Prestige, but The Illusionist is pretty good.
Jessica Biel has had a pretty storied career. She's been in a lot of stuff.
She was on
Let's go
Seventh
back
Heaven.
to this film, though. Let's rein it back in. I think, unless no one else wants to talk about this film. I overall, I thought if we got I really enjoyed the Victor. Again, it's not that it was bad, his whole Europe trip, but you can go like 2 hours or an hour and a half into a film and then want to add this cool little thing and give
weird.
him a name. And I know it's jarring and it's different. Oh, this is the same guy that she thought that they were together. It's weird. I think I would have made it like, it's one of those, like, just seeing the picture, just hearing about it gives the character more weight. Instead of then seeing him, oh, and he's a douchebag as well. I don't know. I thought it gives it a little more weight for her character to deal with. That maybe at the end she did break down and want to have sex just with everyone.
They needed to show the footage in order to write it off on their taxes.
I mean, really, though, if you think about it, like, how great is that? So this time around, I'm watching the movie and I'm like, man, they must have shot all this Europe shit like after they were done with like the main production. I'm like, how great is it for like this? And it's all like on a handheld, right? So I'm like, how great is it for this actor? He got like a free trip to Europe. And he's hanging out like in bars and doing all this, stuff.
The Red District and
like this is like that's super cool. Like I don't know how long they were in Europe, but if they shot 70 hours worth of stuff, he had to be there for like at least a week, right?
Why don't you write a movie where we do that?
Right, we just and it's handheld all over Europe.
We'll go. I'm in.
Yeah.
On an iPhone.
Honey, I'm going to be in a movie.
How much do you think that footage and his scenes were? Like a good 10 minutes, maybe?
No, not even.
But
Yeah,
like
so
him in the diner, I'm saying,
Oh,
like
like
him in
all
the
together?
diner. Yeah,
Yeah, he was probably in this movie less than 12 minutes for sure.
yeah.
I was like, you take that out, you add a little bit more to some of the other characters, right? Maybe you take out the suicide girl. Like then it's he tries committing suicide, but then he puts pain. Like I was like, what are you trying? Like it's like
It was a
focus
book
on.
first, baby.
I know.
So,
If
That's
you
why I
remove
had
her,
so
Catcher in the
that girl,
Rye vibes.
the girl that
Yeah.
suicide herself.
Suicide
Ah,
himself.
I know. I just said a very idiotic thing, but she was the one putting the letters, then, right?
Yes,
Yep.
and the eggs and the sausages.
Well, I mean, that's part of the context, though. Like, this is what the conceit is this idea of, like, we're attracted to who we are attracted to, and but how much of that is fictions that we write about this individual.
Yeah.
You know, because, like, Vanderbeeker was obsessed with Laura because he thought she was, like, this
Very
pure,
nice.
innocent, despite this very, like, outgoing, harsh veneer. You know, and,
Yeah.
like, that's why Victor's, like, little montage is important, so we get context to as like how much of a sleazebag who just like had his first worldly experience like he is versus like this ideal of like this educated good young man who just went through Europe, you know?
Yeah.
Like he's not well traveled. He did everything that he wasn't supposed to, you know? And like that's what this entire piece is supposed to be, and that's what Ellis likes doing is he likes like hyperbolic it's satire on what like we think that capitalist like 2000 society is like, and he does it with each of his pieces.
Right.
So
It's supposed to be. I'm just thinking you can still get that, but make it more concise, I guess, or in a.
it's
I
the
don't know.
2000s. Like concise isn't new and exciting because like I feel
No,
like
but
a
I
lot
mean
of well, that's what they
that
were experimenting at the time. Do you know? Like that's a big part of it because like that
apparently that
was literature back
snowflake
then.
turning into a drop was CGI, and that was one of the most expensive things because it was back in like 2001 or so, like computer generated snowflake turning into water.
Oh yeah, that scene.
That's
I
fun.
I thought it was. I thought that was a. I thought it was a feather. And I was like, no, go back to the Forrest Gump movie. You don't want to be in this one.
Also, remember this movie is following Memento.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now everybody's trying to make like disjointed films after this.
Well, yeah, and that, and
Like-
I mean, very much.
Yeah.
Again, like let's make it kind of Pulp Fiction-y. Let's try to have all this like super smart dialogue and dropping the motherfuckers and this and that. And like I said, why was everyone being so extra? Like even characters that didn't have to be extra were being extra.
Listen, I don't fault you guys for absolutely despising this movie because I told you how I felt about it the first go round. But what I
I
found the
don't
most weird is like I don't hate this movie anymore.
Yeah, no, like
Look.
I think that's totally valid because I think it's
That's
a good
great.
piece of film. I think they're trying to do something interesting. They're using like this kind of weird sense of intellectualism that was part
Yeah.
of the time. Like you couldn't be a sophisticated, interesting person back in the 2000s unless you were deeply cynical, deeply flawed. You know, like if you didn't have like that grime or like were you even a real person? Like I think that's a big aspect that was like being done at the time.
Yep.
You know, like I think it's a very interesting piece. Like it just kind of feels like a really rocky like roller coaster, you know?
And
Like
it's trying to be like Cruel Intentions.
yes,
Yeah.
it is. It is definitely.
And then that's how the studios definitely were selling it, and I guess they missed, and that's not how the film actually is. Look, my disdain for it, I like all the themes, I like the ideas. I just thought it was very messy, and I know it's like we're purposely being messy, but at the same time, I'm like, but you're also kind of being lazy, you know. Because look, I watched Less Than Zero. When did that movie come out? It came out in '87. I probably watched that when I was like 10, and that blew my mind Because it's like there's no reason why you should be watching less than 0 when you're 10. And so
You probably
I
turned
was
to your parents as soon as you were done watching it, and you were like, "Mom and Dad, I'm moving to LA."
well,
boy.
you see, for me, it's like, oh, Robert Downey Jr. at 10 years old. It's like, what do I know? Like Charlie Chaplin and stuff like that. Andrew
Not even.
McCarthy.
Yeah.
Like, well, maybe I watched it a little later, but it's like I knew the actors in it. Isn't Andrew McCarthy in
Weekend at Bernie's.
Weekend at Bernie's? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what it was. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, Weekend at Bernie's, and
I
this
love
and
Weekend
that,
at
and then I'm just like, whoa, what are all these drugs? Like, it was, yeah. So, like, I just felt like you can make a messy movie, you can make all this, but I just felt it needed a little more tweaking. Like, you can. Like all the ideas, I get it. I thought the cinematography was pretty good. I just felt it was almost like there was too much fluff in it. Like you could even get rid of more things, and I think it would have been a tighter film. Not less messy, not less disjointed, but tighter.
We also have to remind ourselves that this movie played itself twice, like so many times. But yeah, the rewinding thing was cool, but I'm not gonna lie, I didn't fully understand the rewinding choice.
Hey,
But they
the credits. Did you guys notice the credits at the end of the movie?
I did.
Backwards.
That's how I sat off.
That was my favorite part of the movie.
I thought maybe it was gonna go back to the beginning, just a way to like start it, because it ends with Lionsgate, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be super great. Jason, were you getting Happy Death Day vibes at the beginning when I was like rewinding, and then he was like waking up in the tree and the water? Like I was, is this Happy
No,
Death Day
because
before
I had
Happy
already
Death
seen the
Day?
film,
Oh, that's right.
so I knew what to expect.
My favorite scene is when he runs. Actually, it has to do with the drug dealer. It's when they run out to jump in the car, and he's like, "I have the keys. I have the keys. Like, you better open the door."
Young James Vanderbeek could jump. That he didn't like slide. I don't know if somebody was like, "Hey, we gotta give this car back to like the producer."
Not slide across the hood.
Over the top yellow Mercedes. So like you can put your hands on it, but that's about it. Cause he like put hands on it and freaking jumped over like in. I was very impressed with that for sure.
That's funny. Also, the kid who owned the yellow Mercedes, that was Rookie of the Year.
From American Pie.
From American Pie and Rookie of the Year, yeah. So again, those are his biggest films, right?
Yeah.
What about Jay? What's his name? Jay Bruchel.
The one that overdosed.
The one who overdosed. Yeah, he's from that funny ass TV show.
Freaks and Geeks.
Man Seeking Women.
Freaks and Geeks. He was on that
Freaks
too.
and Geeks, right?
There are a lot of those characters that you definitely remember, like, oh, they were. And so then I even checked people's ages and how old they would be when this movie came out, because I was like, are they college age? Are they a little older or whatever? But at that point, I was just so like, I gotta finish watching this movie. It's just getting a little much. But
you were really researching this thing. You were really going for it.
I was, man. I wanted to be prepared, and I was just like.
And now you're too prepared.
I am too prepared. Apparently, okay. This is
also thing. Parker Posey is in the film. Did you guys see her?
Where?
I don't know, but she's on the IMDb.
Oh, I didn't see it.
She's somewhere in there.
You know that when the DVD and stuff, they had a bunch of audio commentary, and there's an audio commentary of Carrot Top watching the film. And it's supposed to be like meta, and he's not in the film. But then, so this is what I read on IMDb, so people can. But apparently, Carrot Top's only doing this audio commentary because the director or the writer was supposed to do it, but was doing heavy drugs at the time, so didn't show up on time to the recording the audio track of watching the film. And it was so bad they couldn't use it, and somehow they decided to get Carrot Top.
Carrot Top walked in, he's like, I can do it. I can use some money.
and comment on the movie.
Of what good is that to have him do the commentary? What is he teaching you about the film?
That it's
like we don't get to see the top comedy.
the director is talking about how this is making fun of all those rom-com and teenage movies, and this is satire, and this is so like it. So I get the satire, I get the dark comedy, but it's almost like they're and the meta-ness of it. That's what kept everything I kept reading on. Like, oh, it's meta, it's meta, it's meta. When you get so much of that, it's almost like you start defeating the purpose of what you're trying to do.
I feel like that is him trying to salvage any piece of this movie for later audiences, because I think that's all crap.
It is. I know. That's like when you have to. Like anyway. Go anyway.
No, this thing's ahead of its time. It's meta, man. What about Fred Savage?
I know, right?
Oh yeah, his weird ass scene. Okay.
Well, what?
I didn't want to believe that was him for a second. I couldn't tell.
So Jason, what you're saying, in 20 years, we should all rewatch this movie. It'll be your third time, Jason. We would all be watching it a second time, and we can see how we feel.
Double feature with Havoc. We'll do.
Yeah. We'll do a double feature. That's great.
I'm glad there were less. Yeah. Anyway, that's. No, I don't know.
Should we jump into final thoughts?
I think so.
I think we're so. I'm going to kick it off with Michaela. Michaela, give us your final thoughts.
I think it's a very interesting film. I think it might have been a little ahead of its time. I think that it's very true to the nature of it because, like, it does. You watch it like a novel. Like it's the most novel-y film I've ever seen. Really. I don't think I'd like to see this again, but I have a feeling morbid curiosity is going to get the better of me just because there's like so much going on. There's a lot of interesting ideas being played out here. So we'll see what happens.
No, I get that because, it's crazy. I know that while we were watching it, I did not like it.
Mm-hmm.
But I know for a fact there's like 5 other movies that we've talked about here that I will never revisit at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm actually willing to revisit this one.
Right.
Because of kind of like the same thought was like, maybe there was something I missed or like maybe there's something more there and I just don't really get it. Because I know for a fact this movie's not for me. So just watching is like, wow, I'm not having fun. I kind of get what's going on. I understand the choices. Most of the acting's good. There's like 3 characters that I didn't like just performance-wise, but it's whatever. At least they weren't the mains, so like it's not that distracting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like C-, and I still don't know who I would recommend it to, just because there's a lot of stuff in this film that I know is rather triggering. I don't want to say aged poorly, but like I don't know who I could honestly say like, hey, watch this, you'll have a fun time. No, masochists. I'll people who are full of themselves, I could probably show this, and they're like, why did you recommend this movie?
Yeah, no, anyone who says their favorite book is Catcher in the Rye or really are into like Ellis, because like they're like nobody really gets them.
So like,
this is their film.
30-year-old white dudes, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Primarily, yeah.
Or film students. Definitely film students.
Definitely film students. Yeah, no. Anyone who's like, oh yeah, Hemingway was like the manliest of men.
Yeah. But yeah, C-. Not the worst movie I've ever seen. We'll definitely rewatch it compared to other stuff that we've seen.
All right, let's move it over to Dino.
Hey. So I was hoping, like some of the other reviews that we've done when I've been like, but at the end of the review, I'm like, you know what? I could recommend these. When we were talking, there's one person I would be like, totally recommend this film. And he was just like, American Psycho was the best movie ever. And I'd be like, I'd probably recommend it to him or a bunch of bros that are probably like, yeah, a bunch of bros. I enjoyed things. I enjoyed the multiple narrations idea of it throughout the movie, especially at the beginning with the rewinding. And I mean, it had very dark topics like suicide, attempted suicide, rape, all that. I was like, I wonder I was almost more interested. It's not that it aged poorly, but I feel like nowadays this movie could be made better. Still be jarring, if you will. Still try to convey all the ideas of the book, but I just think that it would be done in a better way. I don't know if that makes full sense, but other than that, I don't know who I'd recommend this to. Like, yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, it's fine. I enjoyed ideas of the movie, cinematography of the movie, and I'm glad, Chris, you hadn't watched this movie because I thought you did, and that's why you recommended it.
You
And
judged me.
I was hating you for it. I was like, we need to have a vote and kick him out because clearly he doesn't know what is good to recommend on cinema.
Who recommended Havoc?
She's not here anymore.
No.
And that's
I
why.
was I was Naomi.
No, love you.
But
We
I hope
oddly
you come
enough,
back.
though, she recommended
She's
the
not
movie
here anymore,
without
Chris.
having seen it either. So she had no idea what she got us all into.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna say this, Chris. I really like Dear Zachary, so you're okay.
No,
Steve hated
stop
it.
bringing that up.
I love
Come
that
on,
movie.
man.
I mean, I don't know if you can love that movie.
It's very
Anyway,
interesting.
you're
and,
good,
like,
Chris.
that's
You're
part
good.
of why we do
That's-
cinema, is to have challenging material to piece it apart, or else like it wouldn't be as
Oh, I know. The first thing I can't believe I went into the end. I was gonna do this in the initial thought. Isn't this propaganda for just rich white colleges? Because
Yes.
that's what I thought at the beginning.
Because you want to go there.
We
Yeah,
literally
I was-
said in the beginning of the movie, like, we're so fucking bored.
no, like this has been like that's all he writes about.
You guys have to
Good.
love how there's not one black kid in college. There was one. He was a football player.
The one football player.
That's
yeah,
it.
in the Brazzers. It's like a Brazzers trailer, right?
This is
Yeah.
Camden, New Jersey. I looked it up. The college in Camden, New Jersey is Rutgers.
Oh, okay.
So
Really?
I
Does
I grew
Are
up
there
2
black-
towns
are
away
there black
from
people?
Camden.
That's why you picked this movie.
Are there black people in Rutgers?
Oh, I thought the college was a fake college. It's real? Okay.
It's based
I
on
mean,
real college, but he changed some things.
Oh, okay.
One of
It
those.
just seemed like a modern Catcher in the Rye to me. It
Yeah,
was just
and
like-
dude, Camden was like the murder capital of the United States like 2 or 3 times. I don't
Oh,
know
wow.
where this college they're putting that because I've been to Camden. I lived like 2 towns away from Camden. I student taught in Pennsauken, which is right next to Camden. And dude, it was, yeah.
How do you say 2 or 3 times? Like, were they? And then, oh, we lost it to San Francisco. And then like, we got it back. We lost it to Seattle now. What is the murder capital?
I don't know.
Well, Detroit was murder capital for
Baltimore
like
was it
14 years
before?
in a row. So
Yeah,
Chicago's up there, right? That's why.
I think it's per
Chirac and all
capita. Camden doesn't have that many people.
The city of Gotham.
that. Per capita,
Canada does
Camden is
they don't go
murdering.
halfway.
well, let me go into my final thought.
Please do.
Since we're just chatting. So I agree with everything that you guys have said for final thought so far. Dino, at first I didn't know what you meant, but now I think I know what you mean when you say you would like to see this movie remade today. At first I'm like, what are you talking about? But I get it now. And the reason I think I get it is because this movie is under like this weird spell and guise of like the late 90s, early 2000s teen comedy sort of thing. And it's being influenced by all those traps that the movie doesn't need. A much better film using the same subject matter could be done today, especially since like we have so much more experience, like playing with darker characters and like learning about darker characters and characters who just are sort of human shades of gray, not good or bad, So I think, yeah, you're right. I don't want to see this thing, wedged in between American Pie and, Euro Trip. Like I would rather just see this thing for itself. Probably,
Yeah.
I mean, I would say probably what Brett Easton Ellis maybe envisioned, but he said he liked this movie, so I don't know. And plus, I've never actually read his material, so who am I to say? Who would I recommend this thing to? I would recommend it to people who are fans of his writing. I would recommend it to people who are fans of American Psycho and Less Than Zero, since this thing is all sort of connected through like a family tie. And maybe I would recommend this thing to people who are really like into teen and college movies of that era. I mean, I don't think this is one of the better ones of that era for sure, but there are some interesting things to explore in this film. I think that's my final thought. I think that's all I want to say about this thing.
Oh, Jason, I was thinking more like Wes Anderson doing this, you know.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
No. I'm kidding.
I don't want to see a Wes Anderson version of this movie. No,
nobody does.
I'm glad you brought up, but after
Yeah.
thinking of the Wes Anderson bit, I was thinking, oh, like PTA kind of does similar ideas. I feel like he might be able to tackle this in a way that is a little more sensy.
Yeah, maybe.
That's it. All right. Who's next?
That leaves Chris and Steve.
You're on mute, Senor
Yeah.
Professor.
I said if it was a Wes Anderson movie, Gene Hackman would come back out of retirement. Like, it would be amazing. Steve, you want to give us your final thoughts?
Professor.
Final thoughts. If somebody was pointing a gun at me,
Oh my God.
and they went, in order for you to get out of this alive, you have to watch either Havoc or this movie. In a heartbeat, I will pick this movie. But it's still not my favorite movie. You guys have fun rewatching it. I probably won't, because just because, sure, it was enjoyable for what it was, but I don't know if I want to go through it. And it was very interesting for many reasons to finally see the myth, the legend of James Van Der Beek, because I legit have never seen him act. Ever.
He actually did really well. I will say that. I enjoyed his portrayal.
He did have crazy facial expressions. I felt bad for the gay dude, you know, because he just needed to, like, you know, go to West Hollywood or something, you know, but he was just in the wrong place or hitting on the wrong people.
He was from Lost.
What?
Oh, yeah.
He was in like the first season or two of Lost.
Okay, I never watched that.
He had a lot of rouge.
Overall, it's hard for me to recommend to people. We didn't even talk about James Van Der Beek punching the heck out of.
I did write that. Because at times they would like blow up, and then it was just what they were thinking. Kind of like the gay dude thinking that he's making out, but then he's masturbating under the pillow, but then he's kind of not. I'm like, what? What is what? Anyway, sorry. Go on, Steve.
That's it. That's all I wanted to say.
One final thing. I did learn one thing. Did anyone know that Mila Jovovich was also a musician?
Was also what?
A musician.
No. Okay. What does that have to do with anything?
That I learned that because when it scrolls backwards, the credits in the different songs, I saw Mila Jovovich. And I was like, Mila Jovovich, a song? And so I looked up, and she's also a musician. And I was like, who would have thought? So that's what I got.
I do have one more question for you guys. At the end of the movie, Ian Somerhalder and
Shannyn
Sossamon. What's her name?
Shannyn Sossamon.
Sossamon goes. They're walking away from the party, Does that mean all the stuff that happened in the party to them never happened? Like she never went home with that dude and got raped, and he never went off?
No, it all happened. It's just like I think that they felt it was necessary for the two admirers to have like a moment to kind of like share the fact that they all like they both really liked this dude, but he was both inaccessible to them in like different ways, and because he was inaccessible, they made the decisions that they did. Like I think that's what that was supposed to be.
Was that like the end of the timeline, or was that wedged somewhere before everything transpired?
No,
it was like right at the end, because like
end.
right after that, he goes off into the distance on his bike.
Okay.
And it ends with his little narration.
Life sucks.
Yeah, life sucks.
Or no, it gets cut off before he says life sucks, and it's like, is he gonna crash his motorcycle?
Man, you guys don't even want to know how far I was synced into my seat when he was on that motorcycle at the end of that movie in the original theater I was watching this thing in. It was like past midnight at this point. And I remember like, when is this movie gonna end?
It feels really long. It feels really long. So I was thinking and I was hoping. Okay, final thought. I was so hoping
40 minutes, Dino. 40 minutes.
That at the very end, that it was like, because it was rewinding and starting and rewinding, and sometimes there are movies that kind of give you almost like multiple choices, right? Multiple timelines. It's like, if you only go back and instead of you take the red pill, you take the blue pill and you end up here. I was thinking that when we went back to that party, that Vanderbeek, because it sees him walking out, that he was going to walk towards and actually talk to Lauren, and that things would have been different and she wouldn't have got raped, but didn't happen.
It's weird because it's like she didn't even really consider it a rape. She was like, that was my first time having sex. That's how it went.
I feel like
it was the early 2000s. We're still in that awful period where so many guys think so many gray areas aren't what it is. You know, because we recognize that now. No, it's not an or. It's the truth of it.
No. I wasn't or to you. I was gonna say, or it would take time for the woman or the person that got that to recognize what had happened. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying or it wasn't rape. I'm laughing. No. I completely agree with you, Michaela. Just from like my experiences and friends, like it's the idea of it not making sense to you yet at the time. That's a big thing, right? Of the idea of trauma not hitting you in the moment, but later on.
Right.
That's what I meant. Not that I was saying, or no.
If you really thought that's what Dino said, put it in the comments below.
No, don't cancel me. Don't
No,
me, guys.
It's the boats. Oars.
Well, Chris, did you give your final thought?
So mine, for me, man, this was I would recommend it to people I don't like. Maybe they wouldn't talk to me again.
Enemy list.
You would love Havoc, then go watch that right after we're done here.
For me, one of the cool things at the end was, at the beginning they called it the end of the world party, and at the end it was the end of the world party. And I don't even think the party was called that to the characters in the movie. I think they were saying like the end of the world that we saw, like they had created in the movie, was done now. Would be interesting to find out what happened to him after that, riding off on. But again, I don't know that I'd invest the time, depending on how long it would be into that. So for me, this is one, it's dangerous when you recommend a movie you haven't actually seen all the way. And most of the ones I have in the past, I have seen. Jason, I applaud you for being that brave, because you typically do that. But sometimes it ends up this way. And for me, I feel like out of the six of us, I might like it the least.
I was scared to watch it again, Chris. I'm not going to lie. When you recommended it last week, I was like, "Ooh,
yeah." You at the end of the last one, you said, "I really want to talk about this now. Like, I can't wait to talk about this."
I've never spoke to anyone about this movie before.
Yeah.
And you
So this
never
is
will
great.
again.
Like
Yeah.
I'm
I
like
can just imagine. I can imagine Jason 2003 in church in mass in a confessional booth. Like, what is your sin? My son is like, Father. Last year I saw this fucking movie.
Jason, did you go by yourself? Because I know you're a fan of watching movies by yourself. So you were at the theater by yourself.
I was out on like Mound Road, which was like 30 miles from my house in the snow. There was me and maybe 2 or 3 other people in a giant theater in the middle of like nowhere. And when I left, I was like the only car in the parking lot, and I had to drive home in the snow, which took probably like an hour and a half.
See, I want to see that movie. I want to see that night where you chose to see this.
It was bad, man. I was like, oh, I'm never going to the movies out here by myself again in the snow to watch junk. Like I was sick. Like the movie made me ill.
Yeah,
Slept
it
in his
makes
car.
it feel kind of dirty. I'm glad we're talking about it, because I was like, this is.
I'm glad we're
also
talking about our
something.
trauma together.
Yeah. My
Well, I guess,
aunt. I had dinner.
Happy
I
to
had
bring it
dinner
up,
with
guys.
My aunt. I had dinner with my aunt, and she's like, "What movie did you see?" And I was kind of. I was like, "Well, I thought it was a rom-com, but it started with rape, so I went downhill from there." She's like, "Whoa."
Yeah.
That was one of the.
Started
So I
with
guess
there.
if everybody's done with their thoughts, I just have one more question for the evening, and that's Steve. What do you got for us next week?
Next week, I don't know why you asked me when you know that you are next. For cinema.
Jason.
Well, because you guys thought you got away from it, I'm putting it back in your face. Next week, we're watching Les Samurai.
Oh,
Hey,
okay.
yes.
You guys thought you escaped it. Not quite. We're going to check it out. It's available on HBO as of right now, the last I checked.
And Criterion Channel, if you got it.
And Criterion and probably Canopy, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah, maybe Canopy.
There you go.
That's good.
For
I've seen it.
Jason Echols, El Dandino, El Professor, Michaela and JP, and me, Steve TV. We'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.
Hey, I'm JP Cerno. Thank you for watching Oya Dimelo Network. Here's additional videos right here for you to click on. And don't forget to subscribe. Isaac has a puppy and we need to take care of it.